My name is Dr. Elena Vance, and I am 32 years old. They say time heals all wounds, but that's a lie told by people who have never been betrayed by their own blood. 7 years ago, my father stood on our front porch in Silver Falls, Connecticut, and told me that a daughter who steals from her family is no daughter at all. He didn't believe me when I swore it was my brother, Leo, who had emptied their retirement account. He believed the golden child. He pointed at the street, his finger trembling, and told me to never look back. For 7 years, I didn't. I worked, I bled, and I built a life they couldn't even dream of. I became a senior transplant coordinator at one of the top trauma hospitals in the country. My life is quiet, precise, and mine. Or at least, it was. Until yesterday morning. A file landed on my desk, a high-priority case. A man in desperate need of a kidney transplant. I opened the folder, and my heart stopped. The name was Gerald Vance. My father. And the only matching donor in the system was my brother, Leo. But there was a note attached to the file: potential donor, Leo, has gone missing. Relatives are in distress. Before I reveal what happened when I walked into that hospital room, please take a moment to like and subscribe. Only do it if this story resonates with you. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from right now? Let's go back to the summer of 2019. The day my life changed forever. Growing up, Leo was a god in our house. He was the star quarterback, the boy with the $1 million smile. I was just Elena, the quiet one, the girl who spent her weekends volunteering at the local clinic and studying for them cats. I thought I was loved, but looking back, I realize I was just tolerated. The explosion happened 2 weeks before I was supposed to leave for medical school. My parents had saved $80,000 for my tuition and their retirement. It was gone. One morning, the bank sent an alert. The account was empty. I remember the smell of burnt coffee in the kitchen when my dad confronted us. Leo was crying, the kind of crying that makes adults want to fix everything. He told them he saw me with the bank fob. He swore he heard me talking on the phone about how I deserved the money because they never supported my dreams. It was a lie. A cold, calculated, disgusting lie. But Leo was the star. I was just the difficult one. I stood there, paralyzed, while my mother looked at me with pure, undiluted hatred. "Pack your bags, Elena," my father said. His voice wasn't angry. It was worse. It was indifferent. "We aren't paying for a thief's education. You are a disgrace to this family." I tried to show them the texts, the proof, but my father threw my phone against the wall. It shattered into a dozen pieces, just like my trust. I left that night with one suitcase and $142 in my pocket. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I walked to the end of the driveway, and for the first time in my life, I truly saw them for who they were. The first night after I was kicked out, I slept at a 24-hour bus station. I remember clutching my suitcase so hard my knuckles bled. I had $142 and a medical school acceptance letter that was now worth less than the paper it was printed on. I didn't go to medical school that fall. Instead, I took a job cleaning rooms at a motel on the outskirts of the city. For 2 years, my life was a cycle of bleach, sweat, and cheap ramen. I worked 16-hour shifts, scrubbing floors until my hands were raw, and then I'd go to the public library to study. I wasn't going to let Leo win. Every time my back ached or a guest treated me like dirt, I'd close my eyes and see Leo smirk in that kitchen. That was my fuel. I never reached out to them. Not once. But the world is small, especially in a place like Silver Falls. About 6 months in, I saw a post on Facebook from a mutual friend. It was a photo of a celebration. My parents were standing in front of a brand new SUV. Leo was in the middle, holding a set of keys, looking like a hero. The caption read, "So proud of Leo for starting his new business venture. Success follows hard work." I stared at that photo for an hour. That wasn't hard work. That was my tuition money. That was my parents' retirement. Leo hadn't just stolen my future, he had bought their love with the very money he'd blamed me for taking. I felt a coldness settle in my chest that hasn't left since. I blocked them all. I deleted my social media. I became a ghost. I eventually saved enough to enroll in a state college, working nights as a CNA, certified nursing assistant, in a hospice ward. That's where I learned what family really means. I saw people die alone in beautiful rooms because they had spent their lives being toxic to those who loved them. And I saw people die in peace, surrounded by friends who were more family than blood could ever be. I worked. I studied. I climbed. I didn't have a safety net, so I learned how to never fall. By the time I was 29, I had finally clawed my way into a residency program. I moved 3 states away. I changed my hair, I changed my style, I even changed how I spoke. I was building a fortress around myself. And then came the letter from Aunt Ruth. She was the only one who had managed to find my new address. It was short, written in her shaky, elegant handwriting. Elena, I know you said you'd never come back. But Leo's business failed. He lost everything, the house, the cars, the pride. And your father, he's not well. He's asking for you, but not in the way you'd hope. I burned that letter in the sink. I told myself I didn't care. I told myself that the girl from Silver Falls was dead. But 3 days later, as I was finishing a double shift at the hospital, I saw a familiar name on the incoming emergency transport list. Elena Vance had been brought in for a controlled substance overdose. He was stable, but the address listed was a homeless shelter. The golden child had finally lost his shine. But as I stood there in my white coat, looking at the screen, I didn't feel happy. I felt nothing. And that's when I realized, the final stage of grief isn't anger. It's silence. But the silence was about to be broken by a thunderclap. Because my father's kidneys were failing, and the hero son who had stolen my life was about to be asked to save his. Wait until you hear what Leo did when the doctors told him he was the only match. The air in the transplant unit is different from the rest of the hospital. It's quieter, heavier, filled with the hum of dialysis machines and the hushed prayers of people waiting for a miracle. I stood outside room 402 for 5 minutes, my hand hovering over the door handle. My name tag felt heavy against my chest, Dr. Elena Vance, Senior Transplant Coordinator. When I finally pushed the door open, the room smelled of antiseptic and old age. My father, Gerald, looked like a shadow of the man who had pointed his finger at me 7 years ago. He was hooked up to monitors, his skin a sallow, sickly yellow. But it was my mother, Diane, who I noticed first. She was sitting in the corner, clutching a worn-out Bible. When she looked up and saw me, her jaw dropped. She didn't see her daughter. She saw a ghost. Elena, she whispered, her voice cracking. I didn't hug her. I didn't cry. I kept my voice professional, the way I would with any other patient's family. Mrs. Vance. I'm the coordinator assigned to this case. I've reviewed the charts. My father turned his head slowly. When his eyes met mine, for a second, I saw a flash of the old Gerald, the man who valued obedience above all else. But then, he saw the white coat. He saw the stethoscope. He saw the authority in my eyes that he had tried so hard to crush. You became a doctor, he wheezed. I did, I said simply. Without your help. Now, let's talk about your kidneys. They are failing. Dialysis is no longer enough. You need a transplant, and you need it within the month. The door burst open behind me. It was Leo. He looked terrible, unshaven, wearing a stained hoodie, his eyes darting around the room. The golden child had clearly been living a hard life. When he saw me, he froze. A flicker of fear crossed his face, followed by something I recognized instantly, greed. Elena. Thank God you're here, he shouted, trying to sound relieved. You're a big shot doctor now. You can fix this, right? You can get Dad to the top of the list? The list doesn't work that way, Leo, I said, my voice like iron. But the records show you were tested as a potential donor. You're a perfect match. 6 out of 6. You could give him a kidney tomorrow. The room went silent. My mother looked at Leo with hope. My father looked at his son, the son he had sacrificed everything for. Leo started to stutter. Yeah, I wanted to. But Elena, I've been sick. My health isn't great. The doctors, they said it might be risky for me. I have a business to rebuild, I can't be sidelined for months. What business, Leo? I asked, stepping closer. The one you started with my tuition money? Or the one that left you in a homeless shelter last month? My mother gasped. My father's monitors started to beep faster. I checked your toxicology report from your last admission, Leo, I continued, leaning in so only he could hear. You're healthy enough to donate. You're just a coward. You took their money, you took their love, and now that they need you to give something back, you're looking for the exit. Leo backed away, his face turning a blotchy red. You can't talk to me like that. Mom, tell her. But for the first time in 7 years, my mother didn't defend him. She looked at Leo, then at my dying father, and finally back at me. She saw the truth written in the medical files I was holding. Elena, my father whispered from the bed, his voice trembling. Please. Help me. I looked at the man who had called me a thief. I looked at the brother who had stolen my youth. And then I did something they never expected. I'll help you, Dad, I said. But not the way you think. To get on my transplant list, we're going to have a little meeting. And this time everyone is going to tell the truth. Especially Leo. Wait until you hear what I forced Leo to confess in front of our parents while the cameras were rolling. I led my mother and Leo into a small, windowless consultation room just down the hall from my father's ward. In the hospital, we call these family rooms, but usually, they are for delivering bad news. Today, it was for delivering the truth. I sat at the head of the table, my posture perfect, my hands folded on a thick blue folder. Leo was pacing, his hands shaking, looking for any way to flip the script. My mother sat across from me, her eyes red, looking at me like I was a stranger she was afraid of. Elena, please, she started, your father is weak. We don't have time for games. This isn't a game, Mom, I said, my voice flat. This is protocol. For a living donor transplant, we need to ensure the donor is acting of their own free will and that there are no hidden legal or financial complications that could jeopardize the post-op recovery. As the coordinator, I have to document everything. I turned a small digital recorder on and placed it in the middle of the table. Leo stopped pacing. He stared at the little red light like it was a loaded gun. Leo, I said, let's talk about the summer of 2019. The $80,000. You told Mom and Dad that you saw me with the bank fob. You told them I stole it for my tuition. Because you did. Leo barked, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. Why are we talking about this now? Dad is dying. He is, I agreed. And his only hope is a kidney from a man who is a known liar. If you lie to me today, Leo, I will flag your donor profile as high risk for psychological instability. Do you know what that means? It means no surgeon in this state will touch you. You won't be his donor. And without a donor, Dad has about 3 weeks. The air left the room. My mother looked at Leo, then at me. Elena, you wouldn't, you're a doctor. You took an oath. My oath is to protect patients from unsafe transplants, Mom. And a donor who is hiding a criminal history of theft and fraud is a liability. I opened the blue folder. I hadn't just been studying medicine for 7 years. I had been waiting. I have the bank records, Leo. I spent 3 years and $5,000 of my own money on a private investigator and a forensic accountant. I have the IP address of the transfers. They didn't come from my laptop. They came from yours. From your apartment in Hartford. I slid a single piece of paper across the table. It was a digital map of the transactions, highlighted in bright yellow. Leo's face went from red to a ghostly, sickly white. He looked at the paper, then at our mother. He knew it was over. The golden child was backed into a corner with no exit. I was in debt, Mom, Leo whispered, his voice finally breaking. I got into some bad stuff with the sports betting. I thought I could win it back and put the money back before anyone noticed. But it kept getting worse. My mother's hand went to her mouth. You let us throw your sister out? You let us call her a thief for 7 years? I was scared. Leo sobbed, burying his face in his hands. She was always the smart one. She was going to be a doctor anyway. I had nothing if you didn't love me. I sat there, watching him crumble. I expected to feel a rush of victory. I expected to feel the weight lift off my shoulders. But all I felt was a deep, hollow pity. These were the people I had spent a decade crying over? This broken, pathetic man and a mother who was only now realizing she had worshipped a false idol? There's more, I said, my voice cutting through Leo's sobbing. You didn't just take the money. You intercepted my letters, didn't you? The ones I sent from Portland? The ones with the dean's contact info? Leo didn't even look up. He just nodded. My mother stood up so fast her chair hit the wall. She didn't look at me. She looked at Leo. And for the first time in my life, I saw her hand fly out and strike him across the face. Not out of discipline, but out of pure, raw betrayal. Now, I said, turning off the recorder. Here's what's going to happen. Leo, you are going to go into that room, and you are going to tell Dad exactly what you just told me. Word for word. If you miss a single detail, I pull the paperwork. And Mom? You're going to listen. But what happened when we walked back into my father's room was something none of us expected. My father wasn't alone. And he wasn't sleeping. When I pushed open the door to room 402, the atmosphere had shifted. My father wasn't alone. Sitting by his bed was a man in a sharp, charcoal gray suit, holding a leather briefcase. I recognized him instantly. It was Mr. Henderson, my father's attorney for over 30 years. My father was propped up on his pillows, looking more alert than he had all morning. His eyes, though sunken, were fixed on the door. He didn't look at me first. He looked at Leo, who was still red-faced and trembling from our confrontation in the hall. You're late, Leo, my father wheezed. And you, Diane. I expected you back 10 minutes ago. My mother stayed silent, her eyes darting between the lawyer and her husband. I stepped forward, my doctor's persona firmly back in place. Mr. Vance, you shouldn't be conducting legal business right now. Your vitals are unstable, and you need rest. I'll rest when I'm dead, Elena, he snapped, though the fire in his voice was more like a flicker. Or maybe I'll rest when I finally know who my children really are. Mr. Henderson cleared his throat and looked at me with a mix of pity and respect. Dr. Vance, your father insisted on amending his will and the healthcare proxy today. He was very specific about the conditions. Leo's ears perked up at the word will. Even in his disgraced state, the greed was like a reflex. Dad, what are you talking about? We're here to fix your kidneys. We're a family again, right? Elena is going to help us. Be quiet, Leo, my father said, and for the first time, there was a note of disgust in his voice that I had only ever heard directed at me. He looked at the lawyer. Tell them. Mr. Henderson opened the briefcase. Your father has placed his entire estate, the house, the remaining investments, and his life insurance, into a restricted trust. The beneficiary of this trust is not Leo. And it's not you, Diane. The room went ice cold. Leo stepped forward, his voice rising. What? Then who? Elena? You're giving it all to the daughter you kicked out? No, my father said, his eyes finally moving to mine. I'm not giving it to Elena. She clearly doesn't need my money. She's built a life out of nothing, despite me. No. The trust is for the hospital's transplant research fund. Under one condition. He paused, a fit of coughing shaking his thin frame. I moved to adjust his oxygen, but he pushed my hand away. The condition is this, the lawyer continued. The estate remains intact only if Leo Vance successfully completes the donor surgery. If he refuses, or if it's discovered that he is medically ineligible due to lifestyle choices he failed to disclose, the house and all assets are liquidated immediately. Your mother will have a life estate in the house, but Leo will receive exactly $0. Not now, and not ever. Leo looked like he had been struck by lightning. He was trapped. If he didn't give up his kidney, he would be penniless. If he did, he would be saving the man who had just effectively disinherited him. But then, my father did something that broke my heart in a way I didn't think it could be broken anymore. He reached out and grabbed my sleeve. Elena, he whispered. I knew. The words were like a physical blow. I froze. What did you say? I knew it was him, my father said, tears finally welling in his yellowed eyes. A year after you left. I found the bank trail. I saw what he did. But he was my son. He was the one who stayed. I thought if I kept him close, I could fix him. I thought I could protect the family name. I pulled my arm away as if his touch burned. My mother let out a strangled cry. You knew? I shouted, my professional mask finally shattering. You knew I was innocent for 6 years? You let me scrub floors? You let me sleep in a bus station? You watched me walk away and you knew I wasn't a thief? I was ashamed, Elena, he cried out. Ashamed of him, and ashamed of what I'd done to you. I thought if I made it up to you in the will, if I gave you the satisfaction of seeing him crawl. Satisfaction? I leaned over the bed, my voice a low, dangerous hiss. You think I want your money? You think I want to see him crawl? I wanted a father. I wanted the man who raised me to believe in me more than he believed in a lie. The monitors began to scream. My father's heart rate was skyrocketing. Mr. Henderson stood up, looking panicked. But I wasn't done. Because there was one more piece of this puzzle that my father didn't know. A piece of information I had found in Leo's medical file that changed everything about this transplant. The monitors in the room were screaming, but I couldn't hear them. All I could hear were my father's words, I knew. For 6 years, he let me live in exile, knowing full well his golden child was nothing but a thief. I took a deep breath and looked at Leo. He was still staring at the legal documents, eyes darting, likely calculating how he could still get his hands on the money after the surgery. He didn't even realize I was his only hope. Dad, I said, my voice turning bone-chillingly cold. Your plan about the will and the donation is poetic. It's your way of buying a clean conscience. But there's one problem your lawyer doesn't know. And one thing Leo hoped I wouldn't notice. I reached into the blue folder and pulled out the results of Leo's detailed blood work. Leo is a perfect match by blood type, I continued, slowly walking around the perimeter of the bed. 6 out of 6 markers. Medically, a miracle. But when I reviewed the deep toxicology and liver panels from his last emergency admission, I found something else. Leo lunged, trying to snatch the folder from my hands, but I stepped back with practiced ease. Leo has spent the last 2 years using specific substances to mask his addiction to gambling stimulants. These drugs have caused irreversible damage to his vascular system. He could give you his kidney, Dad, but it won't function. His blood will clot in your body within hours. He isn't a donor. He's a ticking time bomb. The room went deathly silent. The lawyer looked down at his shoes. My mother slowly sank into her chair, looking as if she had aged 20 years in 20 seconds. What does that mean? My father asked in a raspy whisper. It means Leo can't save you, even if he wanted to, I said, staring my brother directly in the eyes. And it means your new will is now in full effect. Since he is medically ineligible due to lifestyle choices he failed to disclose, he loses everything. The house will be sold. Your golden boy will be on the street with nothing. Leo snapped. His cowardice vanished, replaced by pure, unfiltered rage. He stopped pretending to be the victim. You did this on purpose, he screamed, lunging at me. You faked those results. You want him to die just so you can see us all begging. You've always hated us because you were invisible. You're not a doctor, you're a ghost who came back to destroy us. Security burst into the room and tackled him by the door. My father watched his son being pinned down, and I saw the last spark of hope in his eyes go out. He was finally seeing the monster he had raised. Get him out, my father whispered. I don't want to see him ever again. As Leo was dragged down the hall, screaming curses, only 3 of us remained. Me, my father, and my mother. Elena, my mother said, her hands shaking. We didn't know about the drugs. We really thought, but you? You're healthy. You're his daughter. Your blood type is the same. I knew where she was going. Even after all of this, she was asking me to sacrifice a part of myself for the man who had betrayed me. But then, my father did something I will never forget. He looked at me and said the words that changed everything. No, Diane, he said. She won't do it. I won't let her. The silence in the room was heavy, broken only by the rhythmic hum of the dialysis machine. My mother looked at my father in confusion, but I felt my legs go heavy. I won't let her do it, my father repeated, clutching the bedsheet with a frail hand. Diane, we've taken enough from her. I won't take her health just to prolong my miserable existence by a few years. He slowly reached under his pillow and pulled out a worn, tattered envelope. It wasn't a legal document. It was personal. In his shaky handwriting, my name was written on the front. Elena, he wheezed. You think you got through medical school just on your own grit and night shifts at a motel? You really think those anonymous scholarships you received in your 2nd and 3rd year were just luck? I felt the blood drain from my face. What are you talking about? The night I kicked you out. I didn't sleep, he whispered, closing his eyes. I watched you walk down the road with that one suitcase. And that same night, I found Leo's phone. He'd forgotten it on the kitchen table. I read everything. I realized I had destroyed my only child who actually had a heart. My mother let out a strangled cry. Gerald. You knew? You knew since the first day and you stayed silent? I was a coward, Diane. I was terrified to admit I had failed so monstrously. But I couldn't let her vanish. I secretly sold my shares in the manufacturing plant. I set up a trust through a third-party firm. Every cent you received as an excellence grant, Elena, that was me. I wanted you to become a doctor. I wanted you to be so strong that you'd never have to look at us again. I tore open the envelope. Inside were copies of bank transfers. The dates matched perfectly. In the moments when I thought the world was against me, the man who had publicly disowned me had been quietly paying for my future. It wasn't a story of love. It was a story of guilt so heavy it was killing him from the inside out. Then why are you here, in this hospital? I asked, my voice trembling. Why did you agree to have me as your coordinator? I didn't know it would be you, Elena, he said, looking at the ceiling. I just prayed for one last chance to see you. When I saw your name on the charts, I knew karma had finally come for me. I wanted you to see Leo for what he is. I wanted you to see that you had won. He took a sharp breath. But now I'm ready. Diane, sign the papers. I'm taking myself off the donor list. I don't want a kidney. I don't want my daughter to look at a scar in the mirror for the rest of her life and think of me. My mother began to sob hysterically, begging me to do something. But I stood there, in my white coat, facing the most heartbreaking dilemma of my life. As a doctor, my oath was to save the patient. As a daughter, I had every right to let him go. But then I noticed something that no one else in the room saw. At the door, through the glass, I saw Leo. He hadn't left. He had been listening to everything about the secret money and the sold shares. And in his eyes, I didn't see regret. I saw one last, desperate plan to destroy us all. Wait until you hear what Leo did in the hospital parking lot, and how it changed our family's fate forever. The moment I saw Leo's eyes through that glass partition, I knew he wasn't finished. He didn't look like a brother anymore, he looked like a cornered animal that had realized the cage was closing in. He disappeared from the window before I could call security again. My father was slipping into a state of calm resignation, his breathing shallow, while my mother was a shell of a woman, staring at the floor. I needed to get them both through the night, but my gut was screaming that the danger hadn't left the building. At 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was a restricted number. Elena, Leo's voice was thick, slurred, and terrifyingly calm. You think you're so smart? You think you can just take the money and the pride and leave me with nothing? Dad's money is mine. It was always supposed to be mine. Leo, go home, I whispered, stepping out into the quiet hallway. You're high. You're going to get yourself arrested. I'm in the parking lot, Elena. And I've got Mom's spare keys to the SUV. You know, the one bought with your tuition money? I'm taking what's left. Tell Dad that if he doesn't change that we'll back by morning, I'm driving this thing straight into the river. Let's see how his legacy looks then. The line went dead. I didn't think. I ran. I bypassed the elevators and took the stairs 3 at a time. My white coat flapped behind me like a cape as I burst through the emergency exit into the cold, biting January air of the hospital parking lot. I saw the headlights first. They were blinding. The SUV was idling near the exit, the engine roaring in a way that suggested Leo's foot was heavy on the gas. I started running toward him, shouting his name, hoping there was still a shred of the brother I once loved left inside that drug-fueled rage. Leo! Stop! I screamed. He saw me. Through the windshield, I saw his face twisted in a sneer. He didn't drive toward the river. He did something much worse. He floored it, steering the heavy vehicle directly toward the hospital's main oxygen intake valves, the lifeblood of the entire transplant wing. If he hit those, the backup generators wouldn't matter. My father, and dozens of others, would suffocate within minutes. It was a suicide mission. But as the SUV sped forward, a transport van pulled into the lot, heading for the ambulance bay. Leo swerved to avoid it, lost control on a patch of black ice, and the SUV flipped. The sound was deafening, the screech of tearing metal, the shatter of safety glass, and then, a haunting, absolute silence. I was the first person at the wreck. The Senior Transplant Coordinator was gone. I was a trauma surgeon now. I crawled through the broken glass, my hands getting sliced, until I reached the driver's side. Leo was pinned. The steering column was crushed against his chest. His breathing was ragged, bubbly, the unmistakable sound of a punctured lung. He looked at me, blood streaming down his face, and for the first time in 7 years, he reached for my hand. Elena. He choked out. Help me. Please. I looked at him, the man who had stolen my past and just tried to kill my father's future. And in that moment, I had a choice. I could wait 3 minutes for the paramedics to arrive. In 3 minutes, Leo would be gone, and all our problems would be buried with him. The money would be safe. My father would never have to see him again. But as I looked at his terrified eyes, I remembered Sarah's words from all those years ago, "Don't let them tell you who you are." I reached into my pocket, pulled out my emergency trauma kit, and looked my brother in the eye. I'm going to save you, Leo, I whispered. Not because you deserve it. But because I'm not you. What happened in the OR that night was a medical miracle, But the real shock came the next morning when the police searched the wreckage of the SUV and found something Leo had hidden in the door panel, something that changed the story of the $80,000 theft forever. The surgery to save Leo took 6 hours. I didn't perform it, my conflict of interest was too great, but I stood behind the observation glass, watching every move the trauma team made. It was ironic. I had spent 7 years trying to outrun my family, and here I was, fighting to keep the worst of them alive. By 8 a.m., Leo was in the ICU, stable but unconscious. I walked back to my father's room, my scrub stained with my brother's blood. My mother was there, looking like she had finally broken. She didn't ask about the money or the will. She just looked at my hands and started to cry. "He tried to kill us, didn't he?" she whispered. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. A knock at the door interrupted us. It was Detective Miller, the officer who had responded to the crash. He looked tired, holding a small, soot-stained manila envelope. "Dr. Vance?" "We finished the inventory of the vehicle," he said, glancing at my mother. "We found something tucked inside the driver's side door panel. It was wrapped in plastic, hidden behind the upholstery. Given the family history your aunt mentioned to the officers on site, I thought you should see this before it goes into evidence." He handed me a small, rusted key and a single piece of paper. It was a receipt for a safety deposit box at a local bank in Hartford. The date on the receipt was July 2019, the exact week the money had vanished from my parents' account. But it wasn't the date that made my heart stop. It was the name on the box. It wasn't Leo's. It was my mother's name. I looked at her, the paper trembling in my hand. "Mom? Why did Leo have a key to a box in your name from 7 years ago?" My mother's face turned a shade of gray I didn't know was possible. She didn't look surprised. She looked caught. "Diane," my father's voice came from the bed, weak but sharp. "What is that?" The truth came out in a jagged, pathetic flood. My mother hadn't just believed Leo's lie back then, she had helped him. Leo had gotten into trouble with a local bookie, not for $80,000, but for $20,000. My mother, terrified that my father would find out and ruin Leo's reputation, had helped Leo move the entire $80,000 into a private box to protect it from my father's anger, intending to pay back the bookie and slowly trickle the rest back in. But when I was accused, and my father reacted with such absolute fury, she got scared. She realized that if she told the truth, she would lose her husband's trust forever. So she stayed silent. She watched me get kicked out. She watched me struggle for years, knowing exactly where the money was. Leo hadn't spent it all. He had been taxing the box for years, using it as his personal slush fund whenever he got into trouble, blackmailing his own mother with the secret of her complicity. "I did it for him, Gerald," she wailed, reaching for my father's hand. "He was so young. I couldn't let you destroy his future over a mistake." "And Elena?" my father asked, his voice cracking with a pain that no medication could dull. "What about her future?" "She was always so strong," my mother sobbed, as if that were an excuse. "I thought she would be okay. I didn't think you'd actually kick her out." I stood there, looking at the two people who had raised me. One who had paid for my success out of guilt, and one who had sold my soul to protect a liar. I realized then that my golden brother wasn't the only villain in this story. He was just the symptom of a much deeper rot. I took the key and the receipt from the detective. "Keep it for the report," I said, my voice empty of all emotion. "The money doesn't matter anymore. None of it does." I walked out of the room. I walked past the ICU where Leo lay dreaming of his next con. I walked past the nurses' station where people respected me. I went to the roof of the hospital and watched the sun come up over the city. I had my name back. I had the truth. But I was more of an orphan now than I had been 7 years ago. But there was one final decision to be made. My father was still dying. The doctor in me knew he had 48 hours left. And as the sun hit the glass of the hospital, I realized there was a way to end this cycle forever. A way to give my father the peace he wanted and to ensure Leo never touched a cent of that stolen legacy. Wait until you see the final confrontation in the ICU, and the choice I made that finally set me free. The final 48 hours felt like a lifetime. I didn't go home. I stayed in my office, watching the monitors from my desk. In the ICU, Leo was finally waking up. In the transplant ward, my father was fading. I walked into Leo's room first. He was awake, his jaw wired shut, his eyes wide and frantic. He looked at me, and for the first time, he didn't try to sneer. He was terrified. He tried to speak, but only a muffled groan came out. "Don't try to talk, Leo," I said, standing at the foot of his bed. "The police found the safety deposit key. They know Mom helped you. They know about the slush fund. The life you've been living on the shadows of our family? It's over." I leaned in closer. "Dad is signing the final papers today. The house is being sold to cover his medical debts, and the rest of the trust is being locked away for research. You aren't getting a cent. And Mom? She's moving into a small apartment paid for by the very trust she tried to hide from Dad. She'll have enough to live, but she'll never have enough to bail you out again." Leo's eyes welled with tears, not of regret, but of the realization that his power was gone. I left him there, in the silence of his own making. Then, I went to my father. He was conscious, but the yellow in his eyes had deepened. He knew. "Elena," he whispered. "The papers, they're signed. It's done." "I know, Dad," I said, sitting by his bed. I didn't hold his hand, but I didn't look away either. You didn't give me the kidney," he noted, a small, sad smile on his lips. "Thank you. Thank you for being stronger than me. I did my job, Dad. I managed your care. I got you the best comfort team in the state. But I couldn't give you a part of me when you spent so many years trying to convince me I wasn't yours." He nodded slowly. I deserved the silence. "But Elena, the girl on the porch. I'm sorry I didn't see her." "I saw her, Dad," I replied. "And she's doing just fine." My father passed away peacefully that evening. My mother stayed in the room, but I walked out before the final breath. I had already said my goodbyes 7 years ago. The aftermath. 6 months later, life looks very different. The Vance house in Silver Falls was sold. It's now a recovery center for at-risk youth, a place where kids who have been discarded by their families can find a new start. I personally oversee the scholarship fund they established in my father's name. It was the only way to make that money mean something good. Leo took a plea deal for the theft and the reckless endangerment in the parking lot. He's serving 3 years. He sends me letters, but I never open them. Some bridges aren't just burned, they are gone. My mother lives in a quiet complex. I pay for her groceries. I pay for her medical insurance. We speak once a month. It's a polite, distant relationship. She still asks about Leo. I still tell her I don't know. As for me? I'm still the chief of trauma surgery. But I've learned to leave the hospital at 5 p.m. I go home to Nathan and Hippo. I sit on my porch and watch the sunset, knowing that every brick of my house was bought with honesty. Being the black sheep isn't a curse. It's a liberation. It means you were the only one brave enough to break the cycle. To anyone out there who is currently standing on that porch, holding their one suitcase while their family closes the door, don't look back. The road ahead is long, and it's hard, but it leads to a version of yourself that no one can ever take away. Thank you for listening to my story. If you made it to the end, type unstoppable in the comments. It lets me know that you're ready to build your own future, too. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories of resilience and justice. Until next time, stay strong.